Persona 3 Reload is going to be an assload of fun, but even though I'm definitely playing it on day one, I'm like 90% sure I'm going to regret it. If you give me a hot second, I'll tell you why. Okay, so to make a short non-story even shorter, my big concern with Persona 3 Reloaded is that I'll have a blast, beat the game, maybe do another playthrough, and then move on with my life. Sounds good, right? Well, yeah, with any other game, sure, but I'm gonna be pretty PO'd or, you know, pissed off if a year or two go by and Atlus comes waltzing in with a so-called brand new version of the game that's only like 30% different. You know, kinda like what they did with Personas 4 and 5, plus twice with the original Persona 3. As we all know, or I guess a lot of you probably don't know, I don't know, but the original Persona 3 had a re-release on the PS2 less than a year later called FES, which added an epilogue and a few other changes as well. Might seem kinda scummy to release an entirely new game and give the middle finger to anybody who bought the original version. But keep in mind, this is before the internet and console gaming really had a thing for each other, so DLC was completely out of the question here. Besides, it's not like anybody was forced to buy the updated game or anything like that, so really wasn't a big deal. And it also wasn't a big deal when Atlus added an entirely new female protagonist story to the PSP version, Persona 3 Portable. In fact, it was actually pretty badass, except for the fact that she tried to diddle the 10-year-old Ken. But I already made a video about that, I'm not getting into that here. Other than that though, this version's pretty boss. I mean, Atlus did have to make some sacrifices porting a PS2 game over to the PSP, so, you know, it was nice to go above and beyond with an entirely different story, making the game worth replaying for newcomers. Even though Persona 4 didn't have to gut any corners jumping into the Vita, Atlus still decided to add tons of bells and whistles for the hell of it. Sure, we didn't get a female protagonist or anything like that, but we did get tons of new characters and an extra 3 months of story to play through, with a new dungeon and everything. I mean, it's not like it felt like a ripoff or anything like that, since the game did need to be ported to an entirely new console, so of course Atlus wouldn't want to completely rely on new fans picking it up for the first time. Makes way more sense to add as much new content as possible so existing fans of the original game would consider replaying it. With that being said, all these re-releases of Personas 3 and 4 made total sense at a time before the internet really took a hold in gaming. However, I played Persona 5 immediately after I finished 4 Golden, and boy oh boy was I having a good time. That is until I got to the month of December anyway. I mean, okay, so I was still having fun, but I damn near puked my pants when the game's time went from December all the way to March, because I fully expected there to be extra content after the main story finished up. I didn't realize the in-game January through March was a bonus that was added to Persona 4 Golden. I just thought that was the Persona way. And even if I did know that the concept was added to Golden for the first time, I would have assumed that Atlus would have kept the idea for Persona 5 given that, well, you know, it was a good idea. But nope, Atlus figured that since the precedent was already set, that it was okay to re-release the same game with just a little extra content. And the instant I saw the calendar skip 3 months, I knew exactly what was going on, and honestly, I felt pretty gypped. I mean, imagine if Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 had a re-release with manuals and reverts added to the game, and then Tony Hawk 2 came out without them. Seems kinda lame, right? Well, imagine if Tony Hawk 2 then had a re-release that added manuals and reverts. Again, I still had fun playing vanilla Persona 5, but I didn't play it day one, so I absolutely would have skipped it and just waited for the inevitable Royal had I known. And you know what? That's exactly what I'm afraid is gonna happen with Persona 3 Reloaded. We already know it won't have the answer gameplay or the female protagonist, so there's a huge part of me that doesn't even want to bother picking this up. Granted, the answer and female playthroughs are kind of standalone experiences that you can play after you finish Persona 3, so it's not like it'd be a big deal at all if Atlus just added those via DLC later on, but I don't know. We already saw Atlus put Royal out like 3 years after the original Persona 5 when DLC was absolutely a thing at the time. Like, yeah, it would have been weird for DLC to change the beginning, middle, and end of your game. I mean, like, what if you're in the middle of a save file? But, like, Atlus definitely planned Persona 5 Royal very early on in Persona 5's development. I mean, it wouldn't even surprise me if they planned it out on day one. Like, it'd be one thing if Royal just had the extra dungeon content like Will Seeds and all that, but the fact that it added a good chunk of story made it feel like you were missing out if you skipped it, and that's really lame in my opinion. It's fine for Persona 4 Golden, because it felt like something that just sort of happened as opposed to a long-term plan, although maybe it was and I'm just naive. But the key is, Persona 4 Golden at least didn't feel like a cash grab. You can't say the same thing about Persona 5 Royal on the other hand, though. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say that it makes the base version of Persona 5 feel like an unfinished beta of Royal. And honestly, I don't even care that I paid for the game twice given how many hours I put into it, but having already played the first game really took a chunk out of my enjoyment for the true story of Royal. Like, the new stuff is fun, and it definitely made the game way better, but the majority of it was just redoing and rewatching stuff that I'd already experienced. So basically, like 80% of the game was spoiled for me already. Look, I don't care if we get the answer and female protagonist later on as paid DLC. That's fair to me as long as the price isn't insane. But if Atlus comes out with Persona 3 Reloaded in a few years, I'm gonna be incredibly disappointed. Not because I'm worried about paying for the same game twice, because let's be real, I'm playing it on Game Pass anyway, but because I don't want the experience ruined for me if Atlus decides to add a story or change the fundamentals of the game I just got done playing. Granted, if you play the original game, you know that you can't really add too much to the story, but it's not like it'd be impossible to add something worth playing. Like, if that's the case, then just put it on the first version and be done with it, Atlus. Don't be dinguses. Or, sorry, dingai. Hopefully Persona 3 Reload is the only version of the game's main story we ever see, but if Atlus pulls another Persona 5 Royal on us, then I'm not gonna do anything at all, because I mean, what can I do? If you got a kick out of my incoherent rambling though, then you should check out that video I made with Chris Hansen talking about the Persona 3 female protagonist, Diddling Ken. You'll excuse me though, I gotta go get back to cranking videos out after my little hiatus, because the egg bills aren't gonna pay themselves. Later.